Welcome to Healthy Living. I'm Lori Johnson. Thanks for joining us today. Our topic is Alzheimer's disease, dementia, and other cognitive issues, how to avoid getting them, and in some cases, how to reverse them in the early stages. My guest is Dr. Don Colbert, author of the wonderful new book, Dr. Colbert's Healthy Brain Zone, Reverse Memory Loss and Reduce Your Risk of Dementia and Alzheimer's. Dr. Colbert, it's wonderful to see you. Thank you so much for being here and also for your wonderful work and for explaining this extremely important information in a way that people can understand it so easily.
Well, thank you, Lori. And let me just tell you first what led me to write this book. You see, about 30 years ago, my dad was diagnosed with Alzheimer's disease. And back then I was searching for the answers, but unfortunately his condition continued to deteriorate. When he was 70, he was placed in a nursing home and he died at age 81 of pneumonia and Alzheimer's. And then a short time after that, my mom started developing memory loss when she was in her early 80s and was diagnosed with early dementia. Now, my mom had had diabetes for over 25 years. And so part of her problem was her diabetes, which is simply, a lot of Alzheimer's is simply insulin resistance or type 3 diabetes of the brain. And so what happened with my mom is her condition steadily got worse. And then about 9 months ago, her condition took a major turn for the worse. I was unable to carry on a conversation with her. I couldn't interact with her. And so the nurses had called hospice in to put her in hospice because they had given up. Well, what I did is I put some of these key principles. I started really focusing on some key things we needed to do to bring her homocysteine level down to below 7. I got on the trimethylglycine. I got on the active form of folic acid, the active form of B12, the active form of B6, along with the trimethylglycine. I optimized her homocysteine level. I brought her inflammation down. I boosted her testosterone, a critical hormone for Alzheimer's. And then also I brought her sugar down. I did just 5 key things for her. Now I had to put her on testosterone injections in order to get her level high enough to where it was neuroprotective. And so when I did this, the most amazing thing happened. The nurses couldn't believe it. They said, this is not the same woman. Her memory improved, her strength improved, her mood improved, her activity, she had increased energy. She was herself again. Her brain was turning on. She could interact, she could converse, full conversations, and literally her personality returned. She was engaging. She was talking on the phone again. It brought her life back, and the nurses couldn't believe it. And I remember going to a seminar years ago, and it was on testosterone. And the doctor doing the seminar, when he finished, a man asked the doctor a question. He said, well, my mom is 93 years old. Do you think it's safe for her to go on testosterone? And you know what the doctor said? The speaker said, only if you love her. The key hormone for those people that are in that stage of Alzheimer's is testosterone, especially after age 70, when we start getting frail and feeble. And also addressing that ApoE gene. Just so happened my dad had the ApoE gene, my mother didn't. So his was fueled by these low hormones. And with ApoE gene, if you happen to have it, 25% of the population has it. If you have that gene, that is the Alzheimer's gene. And I check it on anyone and everyone who has any kind of memory loss. The ApoE gene literally lights the fuse for your brain to start going down that path toward Alzheimer's. And I unfortunately have the ApoE3/4, so I stay on this protocol. I practice these key dietary habits, lifestyle habits, and nutritional and hormonal protocols in order to protect my brain. And we have the keys to that now, which is really exciting.
Well, I think it's fantastic. I am also an ApoE3, ApoE4 person too. So those of us who have one, the ApoE4 is the one that's really bad. So those of us who have 1.3 and 1.4, we've got a 30% increased risk. If you've got 2 ApoE4s, then you're like anywhere between 50, 70 or more percent have an increased risk of getting it. And so this is a wonderful, wonderful guide. I'm on the Bredesen protocol too. And it's so people are a lot of people don't realize that there is so much that we can do to prevent getting Alzheimer's, and even as in your mom's case, reverse it. And people want to know what is the one thing. So they're like, oh, take testosterone. No, no, not that. That there are dozens of
Exactly.
causes of Alzheimer's, and you have to check each one of those for yourself, and people may have some and not have others, and then treat each and every one of them, which sounds complicated, but it's worth the effort, and it's not really that complicated once you explain it and get a little bit of help. So that's why this book is so wonderful. And you talked about the testosterone, but there are so many other things. There's diet. There are things like diseases, Lyme's disease, or molds, toxins, molds that you might be exposed to. All these things can contribute to Alzheimer's disease. So can you talk about the main one? You talked about the ketogenic diet, the right kind of ketogenic diet, and the intermittent fasting, the lowering of the insulin so that you're not insulin resistant. Can you talk about that?
Well, again, one of the main causes of Alzheimer's is insulin resistance of the brain. And the best program to go on to reverse that is simply a healthy keto diet. I have found that about 95% of the keto diets are unhealthy. They have lots of inflammatory fats in them, lots of saturated fats. And by the way, if you have the ApoE4 gene, you have that ApoE4 gene carries that saturated fats, and you're prone to high cholesterol. So you're real prone to super high cholesterols if you have the ApoE4 gene. So what we have to do is we have to put you on a healthy keto diet, which I'll discuss in detail in my Beyond Keto diet, which is simply a plant-based diet with healthy proteins, healthy fats like high polyphenol olive oil, a lot of fish oil, avocado oil, a lot of nuts, and healthy fats. We load the body with healthy fats, a lot of green veggies, a lot of fiber, and some healthy protein choices, mainly your fatty, low mercury fish, your chicken, your turkey, and minimal red meat and minimal saturated fats. And we cut out the high fat, the butter, the cream, the coconut oil, the cheese, all of those unhealthy fats that raise cholesterol levels. So it's a simple diet. We have wonderful tasting recipes, and people get used to it, and they say, oh, I'll be starving. No, you won't. If you start, I carry my olive oil. If I go to a restaurant, my high polyphenol olive oil, I'll put that on my food, on my veggies, on my salad. And it is so filling, but it's so healthy for the brain, and especially fish oil. Because one of the key things we find with any kind of Alzheimer's or memory loss is they need that healthy brain fat. 90% of the omega-3s in the brain is DHA from fatty fish. And you want DHA, fish oil, for the brain, and those with ApoE gene need more DHA. So again, there's critical things. The most important, though, is lowering homocysteine levels. Homocysteine, most doctors never check for it. And if they check for it, the normal range is usually less than 14. If your number's 14, if it's over 10, you're in trouble. You're getting brain degeneration, and you've got to get that homocysteine below 10 and preferably below 7. And it is so simple and cheap to do. You simply use the active form of the folic acid, of the B12, use the trimethylglycine, as well as some people need to stop or decrease their coffee and switch to tea. For some reason, coffee boosts the homocysteine level. So again, I have all this in my book, and I have my own product line. I have the Brain's Own Basic that has all the active forms of the B vitamins and trimethylglycine and the curcumin and turmeric. I have the advanced Brain's Own product that contains the 7,8 dihydroxyflavone that actually increases brain-derived neurotrophic factor that's like miracle grow for the brain, as well as the lion's mane mushroom, as well as a little bit of lithium. And it has the citicoline, which provides raw material to make the memory neurotransmitter acetylcholine. So again, this is all critically important trophic factors for the brain. And we want to get that beta amyloid down. The thing that helps lower that beta amyloid more than anything I stress to people is regular exercise, especially aerobic exercise. That's why I emphasize exercise is the critical thing to literally lower that beta amyloid, as well as intermittent fasting. And I do this every night. If you have the ApoE gene, we recommend 16 hours a night. If you don't have the ApoE, at least 14 hours a night. And people say, I can't fast 14 or 16 hours. Yes, you can. Here's how you do it. You simply eat your last meal at around 5 or 6. And then later that evening, you take a heaping teaspoon of fiber. You can use psyllium husk fiber. If you hate the taste, use my fibers on that taste delicious. In 4 to 8 ounces of cold water. It has no calories in it. It fills you up. It helps balance the blood sugar, and it also lowers cholesterol beautifully. But it enables you to get that 14 to 16 hours intermittent fasting. When you have that 14 to 16 hours of intermittent fasting, all of a sudden your brain goes into self-cleaning mode. Your body literally starts to break down the beta amyloid. It also will help to recycle the worn-out mitochondria, the worn-out proteins, and it'll literally take it and form new mitochondria, new proteins, which help to activate the mitochondria for brain energy and improved memory. So again, all of this is critically important, but there's nothing more important for preventing Alzheimer's than regular aerobic exercise. There's nothing more important, and a really important nutrient everyone should be on is vitamin D. It's critical for those brain synapses. It's in charge of over 900 genes, many in the brain, that literally turn on the brain's self-protective mechanism to help the brain function better and to help those synapses. And that's the key. When the brain is undergoing Alzheimer's, you have a brain downsizing program where you're losing synapses, you're losing axons and dendrites and brain cells. This will protect you. So optimizing that vitamin D to 50 to 80 is absolutely critical for your brain.
All right, we're going to take a break and be right back with Dr. Don Colbert. The book is called Healthy Brain Zone. Stay with us. Welcome back to Healthy Living, and we are continuing our discussion with Dr. Don Colbert, author of the book Healthy Brain Zone. And Dr. Colbert, I agree with you. I'm just as excited about it as you are. This is critical information for everyone, and it really does work. And so we're talking about all the different causes of Alzheimer's and how to cut them off in their tracks so that our brain doesn't deteriorate. And you were talking about diet, vitamin D, fasting, exercise. I mean, there are so many different things, but what you also mentioned was critical was knowing whether you are at risk. How do people know that?
Well, first of all, signs of mild memory loss is forgetting people's names, forgetting phone numbers, misplacing objects, not remembering, common things you used to remember. And it could just be some mild memory impairment, or it could be age-associated memory impairment, or it could be early Alzheimer's. That's why to find out, do the Montreal Cognitive Assessment Test, or you can do the SAGE test or the mini mental status exam, or some people can go and have a PET scan of the brain. The PET scan of the brain will show decreased blood flow in and mainly the hippocampus of the brain and the temporal areas of the brain. That's where it starts. And so you can almost always pick it up on the PET scan, or some people can do retinal imaging. Now, this is really a non-invasive test. Retinal imaging is performed by some ophthalmologist, and they could dilate the pupil and look inside the retina to see if there's amyloid deposits, and then we can put you on the program. And after a year or so, we can literally send you back for another retinal image, and we can see if those amyloid deposits are decreasing, which they will if we put you on adequate amounts of curcumin in the full program that you need to lower that inflammation, lower that homocysteine, boost, do the intermittent fasting, do the keto diet, do the exercise, putting all of these pieces of the puzzle together, you'll start to see that beta amyloid decreasing on your retinal imaging test. So it's really exciting. But the easiest way to go is just, you can go online. In my book, I have a little QR code where you can do the Montreal Cognitive Assessment Exam and see if you're starting to develop early Alzheimer's or some cognitive impairment.
We talked about the genes. So once again, we're talking about the ApoE gene, and what you don't want is ApoE44, and then what you do want is ApoE33. So people are wondering, how do I know what I have? And you can take a 23andMe test, right? What are some other ways?
The best way, what I do is I just write out a script, and I do this every day for a number of my patients. I just do an ApoE gene test, and your doctor can write this out, your family doctor. Most of them don't know about this. So many people say, I don't want to know if I have Alzheimer's, nothing I can do. Yes, you do. If you have this gene, and 25% of us have this gene, 1 in 4 people have it. If you have it, there's stuff you can do to prevent it from progressing to Alzheimer's. Please find out. I have a whole chapter on this. If you have the gene, number one, you have insulin resistance to your brain if you have the gene, most likely. You got to follow a healthy keto or healthy Mediterranean, preferably a healthy keto diet. If you have it, you got to avoid alcohol. One of the biggest things, you've got to avoid contact sports. And this is something that's missing in most all doctors. They don't realize if you have that ApoE4 gene, if you get a concussion where you're out for 30 minutes, it doubles the risk of Alzheimer's if you have a concussion, a regular person. But if you have the ApoE gene, it multiplies that by tenfold. So these people that get repeated trauma to the brain, head trauma, you're increasing your risk of Alzheimer's every time you have head trauma if you have the ApoE gene. You need more healthy fats. You need more DHA fish oil if you have the ApoE gene because it helps those synapses in the brain. And remember, Alzheimer's is simply a downsizing of the brain. You don't have enough, again, trophic factors to maintain building of the brain, so your brain starts to degenerate. And it usually starts with those synapses. So that's why we need these key nutritional supplements. You got to bring that homocysteine down. You got to bring that inflammatory marker CRP down. You got to bring the good healthy fats up, the olive oil, the DHA, the healthy nuts like the pecans and the walnuts and the almonds. Those are so brain healthy for you. And most important, you got to exercise. I literally cut my patients back so that I could have adequate time to do aerobic exercise. When you are doing aerobic exercise, you are increasing brain-derived neurotrophic factor that is like miracle grow to your brain. And they say that even more intense exercise increases your brain-derived neurotrophic factor. So I personally do high-intensity interval training about 5 days a week. It only takes you about 10 minutes to do it, but it literally is miracle grow for your brain by boosting brain-derived neurotrophic factor.
All right, we're going to take another break and be right back talking about how to prevent Alzheimer's and dementia, and in some cases even reverse it with Dr. Don Colbert. The book is called Healthy Brain Zone. Stay with us. Welcome back to Healthy Living. We're talking about how to prevent Alzheimer's with Dr. Don Colbert, author of Healthy Brain Zone. And so, Dr. Colbert, this is really encouraging information, so people should not be afraid to find out whether they have the gene or other risk factors, right?
Absolutely. And Lori, what's so exciting, even if you have it, it lights the fuse. But what we found is we can literally put out the fuse by following these key nutritional, lifestyle, and dietary plans. And I have in the back of the book the blood tests they can do. And yes, you say that's a lot of blood tests. But what I find is usually there's only about 5 key things we've got to focus on. And once we reverse those 5 key things, literally we create an atmosphere for the body to undergo, brain to undergo plasticity, where you start to grow new synapses in the brain and you start to grow new brain cells. And those worn out brain cells start to regenerate, or if they haven't passed the point of no return. So that's the exciting part about it. I have found that most people start to develop this with ApoE gene at around age 50 when those hormones crash. If we can simply bolster those hormones, especially testosterone, but also estrogen in women, pregnenolone for men and women is critical, as well as DHEA and the active form of the thyroid hormone. Those are your key hormones, and for some women, progesterone. When those people go through the menopause or the andropause, when they have the ApoE gene, that's when literally the brain is struggling. And so those hormones take that struggle factor we find out of the brain and then decrease in inflammation and homocysteine, all these other things, and putting on vitamin D and optimizing that, and then the DHA fish oil. Again, it's just building blocks to make a better, stronger, more connected brain. And then the lifestyle factors, the intermittent fasting, the healthy keto diet, the exercise program, all of this together with good sleep. Good sleep is critical, and making sure you don't have sleep apnea. If you have sleep apnea, your brain's starving for fuel.
It seems like a lot and it seems overwhelming, but people can do it step by step and it's absolutely worth it. I said, I'm doing it myself. I had my blood tested and had all those hormones out of whack and now I'm taking, it's no big deal at all. The intermittent fasting. And when you think about it, it's a lot better than the alternatives. So it's well worth the effort. Once again, the book is called Dr. Colbert's Healthy Brain Zone. We're going to take one final break and be back with a final word from Dr. Colbert. Welcome back. We are talking with Dr. Don Colbert. The book is Healthy Brain Zone. Dr. Colbert, how can people get this book and find out more about you?
Well, first they can go to my website at Dr. Colbert, drcolbert, COLBERT.com, or go to Amazon.com. And again, this is not out yet. It'll be out the 1st of January, but they can pre-order now if they want, because again, this is vital information, and we are making a huge difference in the patients that I have on this right now. I also have 2 offices, one in Orlando, Florida, and one in Dallas, Fort Worth, Texas.
And I was happy to receive an advance copy of this, and I can't endorse it more strongly. It is just wonderful and very easy to understand and very easy to do. So, Dr. Colbert, thank you so much for being here today, for your magnificent work, and we wish you the very best with the book and the success for it.
Well, thank you so much, Lori. It's been a pleasure.
And thanks to you for tuning into this edition of Healthy Living. I'm Lori Johnson. We'll see you again next week.